I'm here.
Okay, great. Now, before we touched on this a little bit, but I wanted us to sort of dive into things that are more specific within the Black community. And there are, some misconceptions about counseling, fear, anxiety about counseling. Like we touched on it a little bit, where they might prefer to go talk to, their friend or family member or something like that, but rather than coming to someone like yourself. Or oh, it's too expensive. There's so many different things around it, but from your perspective, and I'm not asking for specifics for anybody, because I know you can't go there, but what are some of the excuses, I guess you could say, that you've found over the years?
It's hard to call it an excuse, but I do find that finances do tend to be quite a hot topic when it comes to accessing counseling.
Okay.
I think I have one client that comes to mind that obviously I can't mention, but one of the ways that they decided to look at the cost is something that's like a bill. That's something that has such value and saliency that they feel like this is something that they have put into their Excel spreadsheet of bills and things that they cover every single month because they decide that it has such a value to them that they attribute that dollar amount to it. So I definitely would say that the financial portion can be quite a huge deterrent, especially within the Black community. I think there's also, I myself am a part of a membership of many like Black therapists that I know from school. But outside of that, I don't know that many people in the Black community, number one, talk about going to therapy, even though they do. So there's many people in the Black community that do attend counseling, but it's not something that is spoken about. It's not something that, there's a level of comfort in discussing. Mental health issues in the Black community in general tend to still be something that is shushed. If somebody's having some type of mental health issue, then it's attributed to something else, either drug use or alcohol use or something like that. But there's not the actual open conversation and honesty about those struggles.
So more people attend counseling than they admit to,
Oh, definitely.
which I guess that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
But if more people would admit that they're doing counseling, then it would become something that's a little bit more normalized. And then
Exactly.
it becoming more normalized, then it wouldn't be such a big issue that people would feel that they need to, not be truthful about it.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Wow. Okay. So some of the challenges from what we talked about, from a financial standpoint, you said there are some people who they look at this as a monthly bill sort of thing that they need to take care of. That
Hmm.
way, they can wrap their head around it or rationalize it that particular way, which
Yes,
I think is a good thing for people to do because, you know, you get what you pay for, right? And if you're not
exactly.
paying for something, you don't always get the best. if you're
That's
trapped,
it.
if you're trapped within your head, you only know what and then if you're going to other people and talking to them, they probably only know what um, as much as you do, maybe not even a whole lot more. And so it's kind of a good thing to be able to go to an expert and get some expert advice. Get a psyche tune up in a way. Um,
Mhm.
so again, for those of you who are listening online, I've got Valerie Morrison in conversation here. We're talking about mental health, and COVID has definitely messed with a lot of people from their mental standpoint. And there are a lot of statistics. I can never say that word properly, but there are a lot of,
Statistics.
yeah, thank you. There are a lot of those out there that, are highlighting just how much of a big issue this is. And as we hope that there will be an end in sight, people talk about vaccines and, reopening and herd immunity and all this sort of thing. But I think once this is over, there might be still some residue, right? There might be
Definitely.
conversations that I've had with some of my friends. I've said, maybe it at the end of this, people are going to come out of this either a little bit more well adjusted, or God forbid, they might come out serial killers because, they didn't like themselves going into lockdown. Now they're stuck with themselves.
There is definitely, huge concern in the, psychology, psychiatry, and therapy world
Mhm.
about how people are going to manage emotionally after being in such a state of seclusion and seeing everybody as, a possible enemy. You look around and you're like, oh my goodness, keep 6 feet away or keep or whatever the recommendations are. And it's a difficult adjustment to then not have that fear. And fear is the number one phobia that people have. And so being in a chronic state of fear leads to such high levels of anxiety. I mean, the amount of clients that I work with that describe simple tasks like going to the grocery store
Mhm.
back when things were really, really, really bad. I mean, I don't know how to quantify that, but back when things were new bad, and now it's like old bad, same
Yeah.
bad. I don't know
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
define it. Um, People would describe maybe in May or June, having their first experience of going to the grocery store and having full blown panic attacks and ending up in the ER thinking that they're having a heart attack because that is how it can feel. So, these things we are definitely concerned about. What's that going to look like in terms of, recreational activities and sporting events and, kids' birthday parties and Christmas and, family gatherings and all those things?
Yeah.
Are we going to have significant hesitance to gather and be collective and commune with each other? And then what impact does that have? And a whole other layer is, this generation of children coming up that, we're kind of giving a quasi term of COVID kids.
Yeah.
These kids that their experience of school for kids who started JK, last year, junior kindergarten last year, and progressing through the next, I don't know how long this stuff is going on for. What is their experience of school? What is their experience of socialization? What is their experience of healthy development, in those type of environments? And how does that translate? What's that look like 10, 15 years down the road for these children? What does that mean for them developmentally?
Now, along with that, one of the places that seems to be doing really well right now is the LCBO and
Yes.
pot shops, and there a lot of people are self-medicating in many different ways.
Yes.
There's conversations about the rise of suicides. Suicide is, drug abuse. There's so many different things that's happening. The amount of domestic abuse has gone up because now kids
Yes.
are home with abusive parents, or husbands, wives, or home with abusive spouses. There's a residue that will continue well after COVID.
Hmm.
And you know how do we identify, or maybe are there any things that we can look for to identify if somebody's at risk?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, there's a few different domains there. We have the rise of suicidal ideation and suicide attempts. There has been an increase in that. What do you do? How do you talk to someone about suicidal ideation? That's actually something I've been trying to educate more clients about recently, especially when I'm working with parents of teens or young children. How do you talk to someone who is feeling suicidal? What do you do? A lot of times people feel like the immediate thing is to say, oh my goodness, okay, don't feel that way. You have, your whole life to live and you have all these things ahead of you. One of the problems is that those statements are such an affront on the feelings of that person that it feels completely conflictual to how they're feeling, and so what they don't feel a sense of being understood. And so a lot of the conversations that I have with parents of young children and teens and my older clients, my adult clients that have a history of suicidal ideation, is understanding, okay, what is that level of desperation? You mentioned the idea of loneliness.
Mhm.
That is a very desperate feeling. So how do we talk to people when they feel desperate? How do we identify it when they feel desperate? well, you're going to see things like they're not answering your text messages, they're not picking up your phone, you haven't seen them in the grocery store, their driveways aren't shoveled. You're going to see a bunch of these indicators that say, you know what, maybe I should give that person a call or a text or knock on the door and then physically distance to find
So,
out if they're okay.
so just before you go on there, so it'd be more of the fact that they're isolating themselves more than really what's kind of that we should be doing.
As one of the risk factors that we
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
absolutely. You'll find that it's not always the case. You can find that people feel, quite suicidal and are at an active risk of suicide, and can just be talking to you just like you're talking to me now. But absolutely, there are risk factors of further isolation, further removal of socialization and contact with family and friends, cutting ties, that type of thing, for sure.
Okay, so isolation, cutting ties, I guess not socially interacting with other people. Are there any other things that we should really be looking at?
Yeah, I think that when it
I'm
comes,
really picking your brains today, I know.
yeah, that's okay. You know what? It's one of those things where I think I work best on my feet, so no problem. It's all good. I think one of the things too that we want to look for is, how is this person speaking? What is their communication looking like with you when you are speaking with them? Do you find them speaking in more finite, more negative terms? Are they speaking, in a sense of, things aren't good and nothing's ever getting better? You're going to hear people speak in those type of ways as well, when you are going to increase the risk for suicidal ideation or suicide.
Okay, so paying attention to, I guess, their use of language in the way in which they're communicating about how they're feeling. Uh,
Yes.
what about people who stop communicating about how they're feeling? They're not really sharing that.
Well, that's an entire population I find in general. I do find that, coming back to the Black community, I do find that this is something, especially people in the Black community and many others cultures, there's very limited communication about negative emotions, right? So if somebody gets a job promotion or, somebody gets, accepted to college, university or something, it's jubilation
Yeah.
and people are speaking so openly about it and it's posted all over Facebook and Instagram and everybody's so excited and granny gets a call, everybody knows. But when people are saying, oh my goodness, I feel really defeated and I feel really disappointed and I'm struggling with, my relationship, they don't say it out loud. There's no conversation about negative feelings. So I think that even, far exceeds, any risk factors for suicidal ideation or suicide. I think that's actually a major component of mental health issues is the lack of emotional communication.
So it's that, I guess that's kind of been a thing that has been around before COVID, and now COVID has kind of made that even more in the forefront. Um,
Absolutely.
okay. Okay, so if somebody identifying somebody who is at risk
Mhm.
is one thing, but then it's like, okay, what do I do? Do I sit here and try to convince them that there's a silver lining to this cloud that they feel they're hanging out under? Like, what do I do?
Yes.
Because
Excellent
that's the thing. A lot
question.
of
Yeah.
people, we don't know what to do. We can see that,
Exactly.
some, so we're, I could be leaving my friend's house and be like, something, all right, something,
Hmm.
something's not right there. I don't, what am I supposed to do with this?
Exactly.
And there's a certain fear of, well, I don't want to call the cops because I don't know what that's going to work out. Um,
Fair.
so what do you do?
That's fair. I think these are the opportunities where this type of assessment is something professionals should be doing for sure. I'm certainly not, suggesting that people should, of their own accord, kind of go around taking suicide risk assessments on their friends and family. Please don't. Let me just put a legal disclaimer. Please do not do that. That is not what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
But what I am suggesting though is that we commune, we become more of a collective, especially in the Black community when it comes to mental health. So if you leave your friend's house and you're like, oh, that felt weird. He feels like he's in a like not a good place.
Hmm.
Then that's where we want to increase our communication with that person. what is our vigilance over that person? Are you seeing this person regularly, talking to that person regularly? you know did they have a medium, do they have a way that they could potentially feel comfortable telling you about these thoughts and feelings more, and could that be a lifeline for them? So that would be
Okay.
my advice.
So really opening the dialogue and doing your best to stay connected and having those conversations with them and
Exactly.
looking. Um, now, and I guess some of the resources that you spoke about earlier, that those would be good places to sort of direct them to, that they could get some assistance.
Absolutely. And there's tons of other resources as well. I know that many policing agencies are trying to work on a collaborative team of a mental health nurse, and an officer that's more plainclothes going out, to respond to mental health calls. But 911, absolutely. If you feel like someone's at risk, 911 is what we need to do. There are tons of crisis lines. I'm located here in Durham, so I'm more familiar with some of those.
Hmm.
But Durham Mental Health Services have a crisis line, a crisis number that you can call. Kids Help Phone does have an adult component as well, for the parents. And if you're in crisis, absolutely, you can call them. Your local hospital is another option as well. So there's tons of resources that you can access for sure.
And I think that that is a big thing wherein a lot of people, they don't know what to do. They don't
Yeah.
know what steps to take. They might have a concern, but they really kind of stumped as to what to do next, because they might be talking to the person, and that person's adamant, as most West Indian are. I'm not going to the doctor. Everything is fine.
Yes. Yes.
And more so, you want me to go and talk to somebody and spread my business.
Mhm.
There is this whole conversation that happens that we really need to work hard at getting outside of our head. And we just, not just mental health, but health in general. We've had
Yeah.
many conversations, even here at ILive. We've done many shows in and around health, just health. Go see your doctor on a regular basis. Talk to them, let them know what's going on, and don't hold back. Your doctors are really there as a preventative maintenance, rather than waiting until something's broken and we're trying to fix something. Uh,
Mhm.
but your mental health is the same sort of way, is that you do need to be able to speak to an expert to help you to deal with a lot of the challenges that we all face sometimes. And we only know as much as we know, and going to an expert is somebody that definitely can assist us in being in a much better and healthier space. um, yeah, it is kind of crazy that within our community there's such a taboo around it. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that it is kind of shifting. um, but from is there some people say there's a connection between your mental health and your physical health. So
Yes.
being able to move around might help. People are stuck in homes and they're not doing anything. They're
Mhm.
sitting on the couch all day, and the distance they goes from their couch to their refrigerator, and kind of back
Yes.
to their couch or to their beds. Or there are a lot of teens who are just laying in bed all day
Yes.
and staying
Mhm.
up and play video games all night. What are some of the challenges with that? With that, not being more sedentary now.
Yeah, there's tons of intersection between our mental health and physical health. Anybody who's ever, received a diagnosis, a cancer diagnosis, will speak with an oncologist and will speak with a social worker. And one of the things that, the dietitian and nutritionist, they'll say to you, you know, keep yourself in good spirits, keep your spirit up, keep yourself in a good mental space, because that very much will be an indicator for your prognosis. So we know that our physical and our mental are very much interconnected. So being sedentary, absolutely. I mean, nobody feels good, laying around. It's not a good feeling. One of the things that I've recommended from the beginning of lockdown is try to keep your routine.
Oh,
So
I got to cut you there for a second
yeah,
because we're going to take a quick commercial break.
sure.
shortly. But when we come back, we're going to continue on this. And again, if you're just joining me right now, when we come back from the break, I'm going to be speaking with, continue the conversation with Valerie Morrison and talking about our mental health and some of the things that we can do to.
Hi, this is Michelle Young, and you're listening to ILive Radio, supporting independent artists.
This is Ronnie Sia, and you're listening to ILive Radio. ILive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio. Listen to radio. Listen to radio.
It goes down right here on ILive Radio.
Yo, this is Razan here, and you're listening to ILive Radio, changing the way we listen to radio.
What's up, everybody? This is Cy Smith, and you're listening to ILive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio.
My beautiful people, it's your man Tayanas, and right now you got it locked to ILive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio around the world, baby.
Nothing makes you look, feel, and perform better than a tailor-made suit. Just like a tailor-made suit, a mortgage is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Canadian Tailored Mortgage Solutions will customize a mortgage to perfectly suit your needs. Come and get fitted for your mortgage today at 1-877-834-9346 or reach us on the web at ctmortgagesolutions.com. COVID safety protocols are in place. Brokerage license number 13228.
This is Miss Care, keeping you connected with your iLive 555. Brought to you by iLive Music. Sponsored by Independent Hype. And powered by The Hook Entertainment. Contribute to the conversation by using hashtag iLive555.
For the latest and greatest in soul music and more, stay tuned to ILive Radio throughout the week.
Connect with our team at iliveradio.com or follow us at iLive Radio across social platforms.
You're listening to ILive Radio.
Here are some words of wisdom. Don't change your station. Don't change your station.
And we're back. And once again, I'm back with Valerie Morrison, and we're talking about mental health. And before we got cut off by the commercial breaks, you were talking a little bit about the sedentary lifestyle sort of thing and the impact that has.
Yes. I was just saying that there is, of course, tons of intersection between how we mentally feel and how we physically feel. So, when we are not keeping a routine, when we are in a position of, not feeling very organized mentally, it's definitely going to impact our overall mental health. So getting ourselves into routine, one of the things that I had suggested from the beginning of the lockdowns was, for kids or even adults who are used to commuting, getting up at around the same time that you would get up and walk around the block. Make yourself a coffee in a little to-go mug and walk around the block and get yourself, a little bit energized, and don't stay in the same clothes. Bathe, put on the clothes, brush your teeth, all those things. When you think that they're for aesthetic reasons for other people, they're not. They're for you. We have to realize that, if your mouth is nasty, it's your mouth. So brushing your teeth, bathing, doing all these things, that is not just for other people. That helps. It helps other people. But it is for you. So making yourself important and having that self-care and that value itself is critical.
Wow. Okay. So get your routine up. Make sure that you're saving the people that surround you by brushing your teeth and having good hygiene.
That's
gotcha.
It.
One thing that we haven't really talked about, and there is medication. We've talked a little bit about self-medicating, which a lot of people are doing, which they really shouldn't be doing, whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever. But there's a certain fear about medication that there is out there, and then especially if somebody's taking medication, and there's a concern about finding the right dosage for them, or the stigma that that somebody's going to be on medication. Is this for the rest of my life? I don't want to do that. There's so much in and around that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
For sure, there are lots of misconceptions and myths about taking medications. I mean, the majority of medications that people would be taking would be antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication.
Hmm.
A lot of times, people worry about, is this going to change me? Is this going to change, how I act and, who I am is really what people get worried about. And as you said, this idea of the optics of it, taking medication to help your brain. It's interesting. People will, be diagnosed with high blood pressure and the doctor will write a prescription. And it goes without saying that people are going to take that medication. It's like,
No, I'm
well,
not
of
going to take
course,
because I'm going to eat some ginger. 'Cause, it's
exactly right. The West Indian people drink some tea. The tea is going to help my cholesterol for sure. You know? But when it comes to the meds, you mentioned dosing. What are the dosages?
Mhm.
Whenever I talk to clients about medication, I think it's the same thing with finding a therapist. It's important to find a medication that works with your body, and
Mhm.
it's important to find a medication that's at the right dosage for you. And those things can always be altered, and those things can always be augmented.
And to just sort of jump in there for a second, that's where I think a lot of people struggle is because they start taking the medication and they don't feel like themselves. And the process of figuring out what's going to work for every individual is a little bit different. And
Mhm.
so there's a certain level of frustration. And I've heard this from people who are taking medication that they take the medication. I don't feel like me, and
Mhm.
so they stop taking the medication, or they take the medication, they feel better, so then they stop taking the medication, and they kind of relapse because they're not
Ends to the
taking
same thing. Yeah.
because they're not taking the medication, right?
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a struggle there for people.
Mhm. Yeah, I always say to people that, there is no magic pill. So whether you have psychosis, whether you have depression, whether you have anxiety, it doesn't, whatever it is, um, that medication is going to play a certain percentage in how you're going to feel different. But a larger component is the psychotherapy, is the therapy, is the counseling, is the change in behavior and the change in thinking. And so people will say, well, I don't feel better. Well, are you doing different? If we just take a pill, if you have high cholesterol and the doctor says, take this pill and also change your diet, and the only thing you do is take the pill, but you eat McDonald's, 5 times a day, you're probably still going to have issues with your
But the
cholesterol.
pill's supposed to get rid of the cholesterol, so
Right, exactly. Magic pills. Yes. So that's the component, where again, and I think doctors, if there's any doctors listening, this is something that, I'm a huge proponent of, which is the idea that any type of psychotropic, so psychotropic is medication used for mental health
Mhm.
reasons, any psychotropic that is prescribed, there should be more conversation with the fact that this is at least a two-part type of treatment. This is not oh, I'm not sleeping at night. I haven't slept in 3 weeks. Here,
Mhm.
take this pill, and then you're going to sleep, and then everything's fine. There are so many intersections of what's going on in that person's life, and they need help with that. And that needs to have some changes.
But on the flip side of that, though, a lot of people, when again, this is things I hear, people will be like, "Well, every time I go to the doctor, they just want to give me pills." They're not really spending time to get to know me, or
Mhm.
they're just quick to write me a prescription and send me along my way. And so
Mhm.
there's this lack of trust, and
Mhm.
it's built into the Black community because
Yeah.
of some historical facts.
Yes.
All right. So there's this huge lack of trust about doctors of all levels.
Mhm.
So how do we overcome that?
I think it's through things like this. I think it's through open dialogue and communication and people being willing to put their hands up and say, like I'm saying, I've been through years of counseling. I've done that. I've been there. I feel no shame about that. I'm a therapist myself. That
Mhm.
doesn't take away, that doesn't make me defective or deficient. No, that helps me stay grounded and not be in a place where I'm not aware of potential behaviors that are destructive or dysfunctional.
So if you're listening and you're wondering, I've got an expert in her field. She counsels other people, and she's saying that even her, with all her expertise, she still needs to see somebody. And so, if you're sitting in a situation that you are contemplating things you really shouldn't be contemplating, or you're feeling depressed, or feeling alone, or feeling frustrated with life, due to COVID or not due to COVID, the recommendation is that you put your hand up and reach out for some help. And there's many different support groups that are available, and we've highlighted a few of them during the course of our conversation today. But our mental health is definitely something that we need to take very seriously. That unfortunately, it's one of the last things we think about. We need, if our teeth is bad and it's hurting us, we're quick to go to the doctor because that pain is very evident, but we don't really stop and think about our mental pain and a lot of the struggles that we go through. And even within our community, sometimes we really put that on a back burner because of that fear and anxiety that goes along with it. But if you are feeling it, by all means, definitely reach out for help. You can reach out to, so many different resources that are out there that you can definitely connect with and be able to get assistance, because with where we are right now, nobody can really do this alone. And I think that's one of the things that we forget sometimes. We try to tackle a lot of these things on our own. Valerie, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but again, maybe you can let people know if they're in a situation that they just want somebody to talk to, or if they feel that they're at risk, how do they contact you?
Yeah. So my website is www.liferestorationgroup.ca. Through there, you can get in contact with my assistant. She does all the consults for any referrals that come in, and then she will either connect you with myself or someone else that works with me. There's tons of options out there. If finances are a limitation, there are sliding scales. I myself do utilize a sliding scale as well for a certain percentage of clients. But there's tons of resources. Your doctor is a resource for OHIP covered counseling through a psychiatrist. There are things called family health teams where you can get referred to, and it is OHIP covered. There are social workers that are paid through OHIP and can do counseling with you. I do say, though, it is very limited. There are not very many FHTs, they're called family health teams. It is very limited. So that could be a barrier.
Okay. Now we've got 3 minutes left. So I'm gonna ask you something, a very simple question that you can answer in 30 seconds, probably. What is something that I really should be doing at home to help to keep my sanity?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the idea of keeping a routine. A routine is really, really important. Human beings really thrive in structure. So having a routine where every single morning it's something similar to what you would have done pre-COVID is really important. Making a schedule, whether it be, family bingo, that's one option if you like
Back to the bingo again, eh? Okay.
Yes, I'm sticking with the bingo. The bingo is good. It's fun. You can get little dabbers.
There's a fan in the studio who's nodding her head. Go ahead.
Oh, it's there? Oh, good. Okay, so I have someone on my team. Good. It's not just bingo. You could obviously play lots of different board games, right? Pictionary, that's an option.
Okay.
So trying to connect with family, trying to make it also some type of regular routine where you are utilizing the technology that's in your hand. It is literally in your hand most of the day. And so there are ways that you can connect. The majority of therapy is being done virtually now. People do feel like it's effective. So there is lots of opportunity to feel like you're still communing and a part of a collective, even if it's through a computer.
Sounds like a plan. Definitely want to thank you for coming and hanging out with us this evening. For those of you who are, just joining us, Valerie Morrison, she's going to be here every second Tuesday of the month. And we're going to be talking about various different issues, various different concerns, whether it's relationships, health, mental health, communication skills. We're going to be talking about a variety of different topics. And if you want to reach out to her for any assistance, by all means you can do that. It's what's your website again? It is Life Restoration
Group.ca. That's it. LifeRestorationGroup.ca.
Okay. For those who are online listening through cyberspace, definitely want to thank you for hanging out with me this Tuesday evening. It's been a great time having you with us, Valerie. Our first show together. This is good.
Yes, it was really good. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I think we covered a lot today, and hopefully gave some food for thought for people. Stop hanging out by yourself. Go find some friends and do it socially responsibly.
Yes.
Play some bingo games. That's it.
Exactly. There's one thing to take away. It's virtual bingo.
Virtual bingo. Coming up next is Donna Savage with Savage Desires. And I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation, as it always is. I want to thank you guys again for hanging out with us. Valerie, have a great evening. Those of you in cyberspace, have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for hanging out with us today.
Hello there, this is Benjamin Clementine and listen to ILoveRadio.com.
Hey, what's up, Toronto?